Hey, what's going on? My name is Coach Lee Hopkins. Our pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a social connections coach for the late diagnosed autistic adult. And you're listening to the Patterns of Possibility podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to helping you replace harmful patterns with new possibilities. In each episode, we explore topics that inspire you to be yourself, live your truth, and make lasting connections. In this episode, we're going to talk about what it means to self-diagnose. We're self-diagnosed with autism, and I know that some people out there feel some kind of way about it. And when they mean feel some kind of way about it, means that they don't like it. They prefer that a specialist diagnose them, and I disagree with that. I completely disagree with that. So today I want to talk about what it means to be self-diagnosed and what it means to be professionally diagnosed, the differences between them, the pros and cons, and yada, yada, yada. Are you ready? Let's go. So, what is autism in the first place? Well, autism is categorized as a developmental disability that affects how people communicate, interact, and learn. And I already have problems with the fact that people say it's a disability, and I think it's just because of the way it affects me. Because remember that autism is a spectrum and it impacts people differently. And so I've always viewed my autism as I've discovered it as a superpower. And I prefer to think of myself as a person who doesn't have disadvantages. I just have different abilities. I'm able to do something different than other people are. And everybody has some kind of ability that's different than another person because we're all unique. We're all different. And so I like to put a positive look on it. And I know that there are people out there who are on the spectrum, who are at a different place on the spectrum, who have much more sensitivity to light and sound and overwhelmed and struggle to speak or make eye contact. I understand that that is true for those people, but it is not true for me. And I want to stress that I am speaking from my own personal experience. And so when you hear this, I want you to think about your own personal experience with autism rather than what you think other people should feel or how you think other people should act, because that's just going to cause more frustration on your part to try and control other people and what they think and what they feel. So with that out of the way, this is based on my own life experience, all right? And so I'm self-diagnosed. I'll just put that out there right there. I'm self-diagnosed autistic, and this has been something that was been fairly recent. I announced it on my podcast a couple months ago. I announced it when I really felt like I understood, and there's been signs there all along. And so for me, my journey in discovering my autism, because from my own personal experience, I've always thought that autism was a behavior or a disability that impacted kids. And that seems to be the way it's marketed out there too. If you search autism, it's usually related to kids and not so much adults. But I digress. I thought it was related to kids with behavioral problems and sensitivities, unwillingness or inability to speak and interact and just be quote unquote normal, right? And so that's what I thought autism was. But until I started scrolling through TikTok and reading Reddit posts and really connecting with those experiences that other people shared, because what happened for me is that people would describe their experiences, their life experiences. They would talk about things and they would say, oh, by the way, I'm autistic. And I'm like, oh, by the way, you're autistic, but you are living a similar experience as I. You are thinking and processing the very same way I do. I can relate completely to what you're saying right there. I've had all of these experiences that you're talking about, and I'm not autistic. I'm not a kid who struggles to make eye contact. I've somehow made it through the corporate life and worked my way in the corporate places. I'm able to communicate and connect with some people. I don't walk around with earphones or headphones on and I can make eye contact. In fact, I prefer eye contact. So what are you talking about? You're autistic. Not autistic. I don't think you're autistic either. And so I went through this whole process of trying to relate myself, or trying to figure out what they were saying, because it just seemed like it was a bunch of weird, strange BS. But I'm super curious. So I did some deep diving and I started to read on autism. I started to read and learn that it's a spectrum. I also learned that it doesn't go away when you become an adult. I laugh at myself because it's pretty silly to think that, I didn't know about it. So it just seemed like it's something that affects children, but it's not true. And so the more research I've done, the more experiences that I've read, the more videos that I've watched online of people who identified themselves as autistic, I thought, well, I feel like I have to be too. It makes sense. I'm somewhere on a spectrum. And with that being said, that's how I came up with my diagnosis for myself. And I know that people are upset about that. Like, hey, you got to go to a doctor. You got to go to a therapist. You have to be tested. You have to make sure that somebody verifies that you're autistic, and you can't go around saying that. You can't go around saying that. And I think the idea that a diagnosis from a doctor doesn't really make everything clearer, because I think that I'm a pattern master. I can recognize these experiences. I can recognize how I feel about my experiences. I can recognize all of these symptoms or attributes to what it means to be autistic and map them over me. And if those, because there's some people out there who were saying, you are just doing it for attention. You were just doing it to try to fit in somewhere. You're taking away the light from those people who are truly autistic. And even within the neurodivergent community, there's a bit of scuffle and frustration and infighting within it. Is you have to be diagnosed by a reputable source. Yeah, I'm like, well, I think I'm able to tell you who I am. And I think the only reason why I want to tell you who I am is to make it easier for you to connect and communicate with me. Because if you know anything about autism, then you would know some of the signs, symptoms, and patterns that I'm likely to show you. So I want to tell you right up front, this is one of the hallmark ways of us to connect. This is one of the best ways that I'm thinking to connect. This is who I am, right? I would liken this to sexuality or gender and say, hey, this is who I am. And you can't tell me who I'm not. You can't tell me who I am. And I'm telling you this, I'm giving you this information about what I discovered about myself to make it easier for me to connect with you, not to gain clout, not to be fancy, not to fit into some kind of club, but simply to connect with you. And so one of the big pros that I found in this is feeling like I can take control of my journey, my own journey. I want to connect with people. I want people to understand me, and I want to understand them. I want them to understand how they can best interact with me, right? I want them to know what they can expect from me. So here, I'm going to tell you. It just makes it easier. And those who are neurodivergent or neurotypical, those who are neurotypical, when they know this about me, they're like, oh, well, hey, maybe there's something that I have to interact differently. I can interact differently. Or I understand why they're not getting this. Or I understand why they're asking so many clarifying questions. Or why they seem to get overwhelmed. Whatever it is that they know. But it makes it easier for them to communicate with me. This is what I think would happen. This is what I believe. And that's why I would say I'm self-diagnosed. I want to be able to find my community sooner. I open up the door to communicate with people who understand me. So it's kind of disheartening when I say, hey, I'm like you. Hey, I'm like you. And you'd be like, they not like us. Get out of my face with that. They not like us. Okay, that's hurtful. That's hurtful. I also think that the self-diagnosis helps me validate my struggles on my own terms. Like, I know a bit about why. Now that I know, if I put myself under this autism label somewhere on the spectrum, now I know that my overwhelm, my meltdowns, my depression, my sensitivity to sound, foods, wanting to eat the same foods over and over again. Those are just things that autistic people do. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I know so much about myself. I know why I struggle. And so I can go to resources, a community who I imagine would have the same kind of struggles. Like, I was thinking, who does what I do? Who eats the same thing? I'm telling you, I eat the same thing for dinner for maybe 3 or 4 months. Just the same thing. And that happens periodically. I would just eat the same thing. And I'm fine with it. It's my preference. It's what I prefer. It's what I want. And I didn't want to try anything else. And I'm like, who else does that? I'm just weird. No. I'm autistic. Lots of autistic people do that. Oh, right. You can relate to me. You can relate. Thank you. I'm so glad. Now, one of the things that I like to shift towards the cons, if you will, the cons of being self-diagnosed, because I think there's some people out there who will say like, oh, you shouldn't do that. I know there are people out there that are saying there's some bad things about that. Everybody's going around saying that they're autistic, and maybe they're taking up resources that they don't really need, that other formally diagnosed autistic people should be having. Like, oh man. But as I want to validate that thought. I want to validate that thought that, okay, it does feel kind of scary, especially in this climate where resources are disappearing, and you may be a person who's formally diagnosed, and you're like, these resources are going to someone who doesn't need it as much as I do. And it's because they're pretending, they're faking. It might feel like that. I get it. That is not personally my intention. And I imagine that many people who are self-diagnosed are just looking for answers and understanding. So with this lack of formal validation, there's really no paper trail that when you're self-diagnosed. And you might have to deal with people who are dismissing your diagnosis simply because it's not from a doctor. And you could be really frustrated, and you could feel doubtful about your experiences, and you have to constantly explain yourself. And that's one of the cons of being, self-diagnosed. It's like people are going to come at you. They're going to say, where's your paper? And immediately as I say this, I think, oh, man, it's different. I think when you are a doctor and you need a piece of paper that says that you're licensed and certified to examine me, you know what you're doing if you're going to cut me open, you're skilled and you've been tested in this area. But when it comes to a formal diagnosis, I think, well, you know yourself pretty well. If you're doing the research and you understand about yourself, I don't think there is any harm. But it is a con for some people. You can't get the resources that you need if they're looking for a piece of paper that says you need to be formally diagnosed. You might also, another one of the cons of being self-diagnosed is you might struggle with misunderstanding. Like I said, in the neurodivergent community, self-diagnosed individuals just face so much skepticism, because people are like, you're not like us. You don't have this piece of paper. And I personally feel that it is a way to exclude people. You're not part of the club because you don't have a piece of paper. You are not a doctor because you don't have a piece of paper. Well, of course you're not going to be a doctor because everybody wants a certification. Everybody wants to know that you know what the heck you're doing. But when it comes to you being an expert on you're an expert of you, I don't think you need a certification or a piece of paper. But you might struggle with people who are trying to tell you that you're not and asking you to validate. And if you run into that, because I've run into that, I would just kind of just give them a little peace sign to say, hey, great, nice talking to you. There's no need to try and change their mind. But I think that happens there's some kind of a power dynamic. and they want to exclude. They want to exclude you because you're not like them. You didn't go through the rigorous process. It's like they suffered, or they paid a lot of money, or they took this route, and you can only go this route to be this kind of way. It's like, those people who graduate from college and they get the corporate job and they make some money and they're very satisfied. They have a nice little house, kids, wife, family, whatever. And then here comes somebody who comes along who didn't graduate from college, and they've gone into sales and they're making tons of money. They're doing so much better. They've got a Mercedes, and let's get Mercedes is top of the line. Let's go a little higher with like a Corvette. Maybe that's something that's really fancy to kind of roll around in. They've got money, basically. They've been successful without going the route that the traditional successful people are supposed to go, right? And so the person who went through the traditional route is upset. And they're mad. They're like trying to belittle as much as they possibly can. That's what I think happens there. If you don't have that piece of paper that says signed, sealed by some certified therapist, or by somebody who is an authority to say that you're autistic, then they want to exclude you. So when I run into those people, I just say, peace. I'm glad to know you. That's great. This experience has not been fun, but I just wanted to connect with you, and unfortunately I can't. So that's it. Another one of these things that might happen, if you self-diagnose, is that, you really can't get some of the resources that you might need. So I know that you have to have a formal diagnosis from a doctor because, again, that credibility is passed down to get some accommodations at work, because they don't want just anybody coming in and saying, this is something that the companies do to cover their butt. They just don't want somebody coming in and saying, hey, I'm autistic and I need you to turn the lights out, or I need to be in a darkened room, or I can't come to this meeting, or I have to work remotely because it costs the company money, and they want to make sure that they cover their butt. That's just a fact. They want to cover their butt. So you might have limited access to resources, even though you know why you need to stem, or why you need to close your eyes, or why you need to remove yourself from this conversation, or you know that you're going to have a meltdown and you just can't help it. You know these things are going to happen, but you can't get any kind of accommodation for it. It's because you don't have that piece of paper. So that's one of the things that goes with not being with being self-diagnosed. You need that piece of paper to get access to resources. So I said earlier, some people, if you're like, well, don't say you're autistic because you just want access to resources. Well, you go through the route to feel safe and comfortable and talk to somebody and get the formal diagnosis, pay those thousands of dollars to get the formal diagnosis, to get access to the resources. That's the only way you can get access to it. That's what I think people who were saying that you have to be formally diagnosed say. You have to do it this way because I did it this way. I know that people who want to be diagnosed are struggling to even get that, right? So you get limited access to resources, but you get this label, you get to identify yourself as that, but no one else recognizes it, and they really can't help you. And that is problematic, especially if you need resources to help you be successful in whatever you do, right? So I just want to say that at the end of all this, I'm working out with self-diagnosis. It fits for me. It works really well. And if you're out there, if you've self-diagnosed, I'd love to hear from you. Or if you're a person who disagrees with everything I said here and is frustrated and you went the long, hard route and you want to let me know about your struggles, or maybe you're compassionate about others who've gone through the struggles and wouldn't recommend it. I don't know where you are on this topic, but I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your own personal experiences rather than telling me about what other people should do, other people should think, other people should feel, because it really doesn't create that connection that you're looking for. It really, trying to impose your will upon other people is going to get a lot of resistance. So really, tell me about you. I want to know, are you autistic and listening to this? Are you a person who is self-diagnosed, or have you gone to the lengths to get formally diagnosed, or are you an ally and you're neurotypical and you're thinking, this is interesting, I didn't know anything about this? I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. You can find me on all the social medias at Patterns of Possibility as well. Hey, Patterns of Possibility fam, I want to thank you so much for all of your positive feedback for the Supportive Connections course. The outpouring is just ridiculous. If you haven't heard about this, I dropped it a couple of months ago on my website, patternsofpossibility.com. Just click resources to get instant access to the free Supportive Connections course. You're going to learn exactly what you need to create healthy, supportive relationships. Because a lot of us, if you grew up in a household which you didn't see healthy connections, you were trying to figure it out all by yourself, you might not know what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship. This is for you if you find it difficult to communicate your own needs, or you feel like you always have unmet expectations in your relationships. If you struggle to recognize toxic behaviors, or you keep tolerating disrespect, manipulation, or control, this is for you. And it's free. Go to patternsofpossibility.com, click on resources, and get instant access to this free Supportive Connections course today. Now let's do the listener letters. If you have a question about your family, friends, business, coworkers, anything that goes on with your relationships, you can write me at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Is it wrong of me to say I'm autistic instead of I'm self-diagnosed autistic? I recently came across a YouTube video of an autistic person saying I shouldn't call myself autistic if I'm self-diagnosed. I don't like saying I'm self-diagnosed usually because most people know very little about it and think it's just saw a video of autism on TikTok and now I have it. When I've done so much research and I've been on the wait list for several years. I only feel comfortable telling someone I'm self-diagnosed if they're also autistic, and even then, I'm scared they will hate me because of it and think I'm faking. I keep trying to convince myself that I'm faking and being overdramatic, and that I'm not actually autistic, but it doesn't really make sense because of the amount of research I've done and related it to myself, but I keep thinking I might be faking. So would it be wrong to say I'm autistic even though I'm self-diagnosed? Well, I appreciate you writing this. And my thoughts about this is I basically said them. No, I don't think it's wrong. But I think that there are people out there, of course, who don't want you to say that, who feel like you're stealing their identity if you did. You know, like if you're old enough to remember Rachel Dolezal, I think is her name, Dolezal, who said that she was a black person, but she had two white parents, and people were really upset about her and stealing black culture, things like that. It feels like an appropriation to many people out there. And so they want you to speak it a certain way. And this is a tale as old as time, where people want to be a part of a community and they say they have the same attributes, but they're excluded. And you can see this all over the place with any kind of they, them, or not they, them as in not they, them as in non-binary, but as a person who is an other, like let's say now I have a lot of money and I want to be affluent. I want to have all the rights and privileges. And the people who've had money for decades are like, no, you are not. Or maybe even for centuries, for generations, they're like, you're not part of this. But I have just as much money as you do, but you do not have class. You know, things like that. It's not official. You don't have your name on a school or something ridiculous like that. Something really wealthy people have. And so you can't be a part of the club. And there's always exclusions. And there's always people trying to fit into those groups. There are people trying to fit into those groups. And I'm not saying that you're saying that you're autistic for clout. But I noticed that everybody who wants to speak their truth as they know it are going to run into people who deny them, who will say, no, you're not. This is not you. This is who I think you are. And you need to be in that place. And the important thing is to be able to understand where that's coming from and know more about yourself and be grounded in who you are, grounded in what you know about yourself, and don't let other people define you. Because of course you need other people to reflect back your reality. That's how I discovered my autism, is because I kept attracting the neurodivergent people too, people who identified themselves that way, not only watching videos on TikTok, but people would kind of say, this is who I am. And I'm like, wow, I'm so much like you. And I know that one of the laws of the universe is that you attract who you are. You really do. You really attract who you are. You attract the same kind of people you are. You mesh well with those people. There's attributes to those people. You may see them right away. Like they may be something that you could have one of your five senses. Like you attract people with glasses, or black people, or what other race you're in. You attract people that are your same gender, or people that you romantically attract to. These people just come to you, right? And you may not know why they come to you. You may not know why you're on the same level and are surrounded by them, but there's something that unites you. And so as it relates to being autistic, there's some attributes to you that connect you with people who are formally diagnosed. And if you're looking for them to tell you you are like me, and you're looking for them to validate and say you were like me, then you are going to dismiss your own thoughts and feelings. You're going to get lost in the sauce about who you really are. And so I would say for everybody, reflect on the experiences, reflect on what people say to you, but do not look for them to accept and say you are like me. It's great if it happens, but you have to say it for yourself first. I know who I am. This is who I am. And people, they're going to respond how they do. They're going to say, hey, I see it. I see who you are. I'm glad to know. Thanks for telling me. Or they're going to say, no, you are not like this. This is not who you are, because it's not real. Pick the people that you want to be around. And finally, I appreciate you being a listener. If you got something of value out of this podcast, please share it with other people and leave a 5-star review on your favorite listening app. We'll see you next time. Take care.